Thank you so much.
Next up, we have David Lavenda, Chief Product Officer at Harmony. He's here to talk to us about the perils of over retention, what information managers can learn from Marie Kondo. And David, you say that keeping too many emails, too many documents, too much information can be detrimental to our health, our organizational health. And you've taken a cue from Marie Kondo's uncluttering and tidying up. Can you please tell us more? Do we have David? David, you look like you are. There we go.
Okay.
Welcome, David. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tell us more. What are you getting at with Marie Kondo?
Okay. Well, over retention of emails and documents is a huge problem. Maybe one that's not talked about quite enough. But like a lot of problems that we have in the organization, there's a parallel from our consumer lives and different problem domain. And I thought that Marie Kondo could offer some good advice for helping us deal with over retention. So, unless you've been off the grid for a couple of years, you probably know who Marie Kondo is. But if not, she's a world-renowned tidying expert. I think that's how she defines herself. She has an award-winning Netflix show, and she's famous for defining her 6 rules for tidying. And while it may not be immediately apparent why there's a connection between what Marie does and what we're doing as information managers, there is a lot in common about decluttering. So the basic problem in both cases is over retention. At home, it's when folks accumulate lots of junk, and it's really not that much different at work. Okay, so at work, we're not really talking about keeping too many, VHS cassettes or old college sweatshirts, but it's still that expanding collection of emails and documents. And at work, we have that same problem of hoarding. It's really basically this problem of hoarding. People just feel that they're going to need that content. They just can't let it go. So it's really the same root cause. And at home, this kind of hoarding and cluttering is, leads to a very cluttered lifestyle and increased stress about that feeling of being overwhelmed because you just have stuff all over the place. But at work, it's a little bit different because it doesn't lead to necessarily that, but it leads to a increased risk of liability from having too much information around. It leads to high storage cost. And it also there is a form of stress related to it when you can't find what it is what you need when you need to find it. So Marie's been super successful helping people bring order and happiness at home. So I thought it'd be a good idea to see what she can do to help us at work. And she, as I said, has her 6 rules and principles, and we can just see how each of these 6 rules applies to us in the workplace. So rule number 1, Marie's advice is commit yourself to tidying up. And I guess this can be summarized as an old proverb that says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And it means that any meaningful change requires a commitment. So without being committed to solving this problem, nothing really positive is going to happen. That's equally true for information management records projects as it is for cleaning up at home. You need to dedicate the time, effort, and skill to solving the problem that you're trying to deal with. So here's what you need in order to get focused. So from a business perspective, you got to take ownership of the problem. It's dealing with this over retention problem of too many emails and documents is not a legal department problem or a compliance department. It's a problem for the organization. So one thing to note is that when compliance people look at the over retention problem, they look at it differently than business workers. So compliance folks just want to get rid of as much stuff as possible. Anything that's left around could be a liability. On the other hand, business managers want to keep stuff because they need to use emails and documents for ongoing business. So compliance managers also don't know what each department needs to retain, so they tend to have very generic policies. But in order to be specific and effective, you need to have very detailed guidelines for each department, because there's really a big difference between the items that need to be retained for compliance. So you just have to have some stuff like old contracts maybe have to have lying around for a period of time, and then you can throw them out. But there's also business records that support the ongoing business. So for example, if somebody gets an email from a client asking for advice and they reply through an email, that email has to be available to other colleagues so that they can be up to date before giving another response in case somebody steps in if you're on holiday or away or off not longer serving the customer. So assigning the initiative to only one of these groups is not going to solve the problem. You really have to engage with both, have a solution that appeals to compliance folks and key people in the business units. Marie's rule number 2 is imagine your ideal lifestyle. So at home, this means looking at what a decluttered world would look like, so you can psych yourself up for the monumental tasks that you have in front of you. At work, it's really not that much different. What you need to do is you need to paint a picture for your workers of what a successful initiative is going to look like. So you get folks pumped up, get them eager to pitch in and help make that project a success. So what you want to do is you want to create a map of how you can achieve practical reduction of emails and documents. And have you ever noticed how people will chip in and do the right thing if it's easy enough? So what you really need to do is to institute policies that require business workers to just do very simple things. If you make it complicated, you know that the folks are always going to find a way to get around what you're asking them to do, and the project's going to fail. So at the end of the day, people really just want to focus on their day job. They don't really care about documents or emails, and they don't really care about a lot of the compliance stuff. They just want to go on doing their business. So if you're really asking them to help you get rid of stuff and to classify things for use, you have to keep it super, super simple and reduce the number of steps that they have to do, because if you don't, it's just the whole thing's going to fail. Marie's rule number 3 is finish discarding first. So before you can expect to see an improvement in order, you need to eliminate massive amounts of clutter. That's definitely true at home. You definitely want to start with clearing out stuff, so you can start working on the important things. And that means just chucking stuff out immediately. So, a couple of things that work for information managers in this regard is setting a default policy for emails and documents to be deleted after a certain period of time. So say, for example, maybe 90 days or 6 months, and then after that period of time, things just disappear. So in this case, what you do is you make it easy to get rid of stuff, and if people want to maintain things, they have to take some sort of action. This really kind of goes along with that nudge theory of just making the default policy the easy thing to do, and then making people do something if they want to do something otherwise. Second thing to do is to direct folks to move stuff out of their inboxes, maybe to a shared mailbox. So for example, if you're doing a file migration project, you might also want to direct workers to move files from a shared drive or cloud storage to a single platform, something like, like SharePoint. So at that point, you say to people, you've got 3 months maybe to move your stuff out of the inbox and in their shared drives, and that's it. They have 3 months, and after that, all the stuff is going to disappear. And you'd be amazed about how much stuff will magically vanish. People will start to do it when they realize that the clock is ticking and they've got to do something. They'll actually step up and do it, because otherwise they're going to lose access to the stuff. The rule number 4 is tidy by category, not by location. So at home, it makes sense to organize your closets by related items. All your old team jerseys, hats, and regalia, those go on the top shelves of all the different closets, while your Hawaiian shirts, Bermuda shorts, and maybe Havana hats go on the bottom shelves. And at work, it's really no different with content. If you're working on a project, you can apply retention labels and descriptive labels like metadata to emails, documents, and conversations related to the same projects, even though they might be stored in different applications like Exchange, SharePoint, or now Microsoft Teams. We'll talk a little bit about descriptive labels in a moment, but this is the kind of metadata that allows you to detail the content of what the emails, documents, and conversations are about. And it can be applied to emails and documents and Teams the same way you typically do it with SharePoint metadata. So it goes without saying that if you know what the documents and the emails are about, it's much easier to deal with them. So if you know what to categorize them out of the gate, it makes it much easier to be able to deal with them afterwards. That means you need to have clear policies about how things are applied. And once you do that, what you want to do is you just want to make sure that everything is classified by category and then it's much easier to tidy it up rather than relying on which folders or which mailboxes the stuff is located in, because it's often the things that may be in the same location may not be related in terms of a business context. And then once you do that, of course, you'll be able to move it around, and the most important thing is you'll be able to find it afterwards. So Marie's rule number 5 is follow the right order. So this is really important. With home clutter, you want to make sure you take on like the main living quarters. You want to do the living room and maybe the kitchen long before you start tidying up the basement or the garage. And at work, it's really no different with content. Email is probably the biggest and most visible problem, so you probably want to start there. With, just did a quick calculation. If you, with the hundreds of emails that are pouring in each day, it's unbelievable how quickly they pile up. So consider, for example, if you have a 1,000 person company and each person gets, say, 50 emails a day, and that's probably a really conservative estimate, there will be over 15 million emails in a single year. So it's just an incredible amount of emails. So you really need to start eliminating that clutter. Then the next step will probably be to take on documents whose challenge is not so much the overall quantity, but the number of versions of documents. You send out a document for comments, you get probably a whole bunch of comments back on them, and now you've got multiple versions and conflicting versions of the document, and that just really becomes a problem. So we got to get that stuff in order. And then after that's done, then you can start taking on some of the newer stuff like Teams conversations and maybe some of the other application data and files that you need to deal with as well. Finally, Marie's rule number 6 is ask yourself if it sparks joy. So at home, this means how reducing clutter and tidying up is about happiness, and you feel joy when you see things organized and clean and orderly, and you come into your house and everything is in its place. At work, it's a little bit different. At work, it's stories about how to be effective, how to be productive, how to be stress-free, how to be compliant. Can you find things in a reasonable amount of time if you need to? And it's also about reducing the stress, but it's different kind of stress. It's the stress that's related to not being able to find things when you need it. So it's also stress related to the fear of penalties that you may have if your organization incurs some sort of penalty for not being compliant with company, industry, or government regulations, directives. So I think the question is, you have to ask yourself, if your efforts are helping you achieve a compliance, productivity, and peace of mind, then it will surely lead to joy, and that would help fulfill Marie's rule number 6. So just a couple words about how you can implement Marie's advice. As I said before, one of the things you want to do is you want to make the right thing the easy thing to do, and that's what we do at Harmony. Is we just take that philosophy and make it very easy for people to capture emails and documents and assign retention policies right in your Outlook window. You can literally drag and drop emails and documents from Harmony into the Harmony sidebar, and that directs you to set Microsoft retention labels, specify metadata, what we call descriptive labels, and do it all in one screen in one go. And Harmony uniquely allows you to apply these not only for documents, but also to apply them to emails, which is unique to Harmony, and also to team conversations. And then once things are classified, now you've followed Marie's rule about classifying content by category, it becomes much easier to find, even though the actual items are stored in their native locations. So emails might be in Exchange, documents in SharePoint, and team conversations in Teams. So in the future, we're also going to be implementing not only how to save things, but also which items you want to save. So introducing machine learning and artificial intelligence to help you predict which emails you'd want to retain and which ones should be deleted. And this would be, I mean, think about it as having a Marie in every inbox. So instead of having her to come to your house or to your work and help you figure out which emails, you see this kind of indicators that would say, this email is more likely to be one that needs to be retained, and those others are probably just stuff that can be chucked out and or just let it lie, and it will become it'll be deleted according to the retention policy. Equally important is also what not to capture. So we're going to be implementing alerts so that when you try and retain something that does not resemble something that has been retained in the past, it looks like something that should probably be thrown out, we can help alert users to stop what they're doing and saying, maybe this is something you consider that you don't want to save, you don't want to retain, because these types of mails in the past were not done that. So introducing this machine learning and artificial intelligence to help people not only do the right thing, but help decide which of the right things to pick up on. Well, what I invite you to do is to apply for an enterprise trial. You can try some of this stuff out yourself. I'd be happy to talk to you about how it works and help you implement the things that Marie was talking about and help you deal with over retention and finally find joy and happiness in your lives.
That's David Lavenda from Harmony. David, thank you for your comments today. I'm wondering, what is Microsoft providing that can help us with records over retention? Is there something out of the box that we can leverage?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, Microsoft is part of the Compliance Center, has a whole series of tools that allow you to define policies, to define default policies based on location, based on a lot of criteria. So there's a lot of tools for the administrators to set up. For the end users, there are some tools that allow you to easily label something, label a retention policy if it's an email message. What it doesn't allow you to do is it doesn't allow you to apply uniform policies across documents, emails, and conversations. It doesn't allow you to add any sort of descriptive labels to them that would allow you to connect them afterwards so you can see related items from different applications. So there's some good tools, but it's probably not enough to really round out the complete solution.
Well, that's David Lavenda from Harmony. David, thank you for being part of our event today.
Okay, thank you very much.